Mr. President, you hear the talk that's going on here. There's a suggestion that if we don't pass this resolution, this Republican resolution, we'll stop having oil and gas produced around the world. Well, that's a bit of balderdash. The fact is, if we do pass what the Republicans want us to pass, what we're saying is that any crooked entity anywhere in the world that has gas and oil, they'll be able to pocket secret payments. They can use it to pay tariffs or anything else, and we'll never know. Senator Lugar, the most distinguished senators ever to serve in this body, a Republican, Senator Cardin, the senior senator from Maryland, and I worked very hard to include this legislation in Section 1504 in the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, not to stop any oil and gas exploration, but to have some transparency so that investors would know where their money's going and where it's coming from, and also to combat massive corruption. It's a common sense thing. We're finding this would protect investors, but it's also going to make it a lot harder to get away with stealing billions of dollars in public funds in some of the poorest concerns in the world. Some in the oil and gas industry say this rule to create unacceptable burdens. Well, Senator Cardin and others will speak about that, but that argument has no merit. And even if it did, why not come up with a piece of legislation, debate it, to refine it? You don't have to kill this rule to do it. For what they're doing here is they're trying to bring about the death knell for global efforts, including most of our closest allies, to combat massive corruption resulting from the extraction of natural resources, and also to help investors find out what the risk is. The sponsors of this resolution said they support the goals of this rule. This one makes some adjustments. Well, that's the epitome of disingenuousness. It really is. It doesn't pass the giggle test. The rule doesn't even take effect at the end of 2018. If they really want to make some changes, bring up an amendment, let's debate it, and let's vote on it. What we want to do is protect investors. Investors whose combined net worth exceeds $10 trillion, they support this rule. And it's equivalency with the rules adopted by 30 other governments. And we want to protect the public. Look what happens. If we overturn this rule, we're saying, okay, you can continue to make secret payments to very, very corrupt foreign autocrats like Vladimir Putin of Russia and kleptocracies in Africa, like the governments of Angola and Equatorial Guinea. It's been discussed by the distinguished senior senator from Ohio about what happens in places like Angola and Equatorial Guinea. You have people in those countries, they barely survive on $1 or $2 a day, but their leaders are driving Mercedes and Rolls Royces. They fly private jets to vacation homes on the French Riviera or Santa Monica. They pay off their armed forces to stay in power. And where does the money come? They're making these people having hundreds of millions of dollars. They come from the royalties paid by the U.S. and other foreign companies. Do we really want to be part of that? Do we really want the people of this country to look at the thefts, the autocracy and all, and say, well, the United States is helping that? Anyone who reads this rule pays the slightest attention to the estimated $1 trillion lost to crime and corruption and tax evasion in these countries, and also the millions of deaths attributed to corrupt practices, will understand the fallacy of the baseless attacks by those who oppose it, would realize what Senator Cardin and Senator Lugar and I and others did to bring this about. And the rule does not put American companies at a competitive disadvantage. It applies to both U.S. and foreign companies. It complements existing laws elsewhere in the world. In fact, Chinese state-owned companies like PetroChina and Sinopec are covered by U.S. law. Great Britain, EU, Canada, Norway, just 4 examples of countries that have adopted this. I challenge anybody to show any objective fact to say this hurts our companies. If we overturn the rule, what happens in other countries have been doing the exact same? And again, we'll just start seeing billions of dollars going stolen from public treasuries, squirreled away in Swiss bank accounts by the Robert Mugabes of the world. We'll see people like Vladimir Putin and those around him become even more multi-billionaires. But there's one other thing I'd like to say before I close. There is a huge connection between corruption and terrorism, particularly in Africa. What Senator Cardin, Senator Lugar, and I want to stop. Terrorist groups flourish where government corruption contributes to incompetent, corrupt military forces. Terrorists benefit when revenues from these activities are kept in the dark, enabling them to radicalize and recruit a very resentful population that's been impoverished by the corruption of their so-called leaders. And we overturn this rule, then senators should know that violent extremists and terrorists and other criminal enterprises will benefit from it. Doesn't help our oil companies all, but it will sure as heck benefit violent extremists and terrorists and other criminal enterprises. And corruption is among the most corrosive forces that breed instability and violence. And then countries like ours try to feed and protect the innocent people, get caught up in that corruption and that violence. It wreaks havoc on the people of those countries. It hurts American companies trying to do business there. It hurts Americans who invest in these risky companies. If the norm is non-disclosure, if we're going to vote for this, we're going to say, okay, our new norm is non-disclosure. And what happens when there's non-disclosure? Bribery becomes an unavoidable and accepted way of doing business. And that's what companies from countries like Russia and China have to compete with American companies would prefer, because they're best at corruption. We try to follow the rules. We do away with the rules, they gain. We're only saying disclose your profits. The sponsor of this resolution, even aware of it, it helps our competitiveness. It protects investors and the public. It was first passed and put the United States at the forefront of transparency and government accountability effort that paid off. Other countries tried to follow our lead. And then all of a sudden we'll say, hey guys, we're sorry. We're going back to the closed door system. We're going back to the Swiss bank accounts. We're going back to the corruption that funds Vladimir Putin, funds the oligarchs in Africa and elsewhere. We'll turn our backs on the theft and misuse of payments made by U.S. companies, where we don't care about the countries who suffer the consequences. We don't care about American investors who deserve this critical information. So when they invest, they know what they're investing in. This resolution is an affront to the values and to the citizens of our great, noble nation. And it would be a huge mistake to pass it.